Welcome students. In the previous classes we have discussed about this root type, that is various categories of root. We have seen the functions of root as well as we have seen the different types of roots. We have seen the parts of the roots. Now we will move on to another topic, that is root modifications. Root modifications. Here, apart from performing basic primary function, that is the basic primary function of root is to absorb the water and minerals, and apart from it, it gives anchorage to the plant. It fixes the plant to the soil very firmly. So these are the basic functions. Apart from these basic functions, while performing these basic functions, here the roots will adapt themselves in order to perform certain other functions. So when they perform certain other functions, that doesn't mean that they will not be performing the basic function of absorbing water and minerals and giving anchorage to the plant. They will be doing that. Apart from doing that, so they will also do some other functions. They will adapt themselves in such a form that they will be able to perform other functions as well. So that adaptations which the plants perform or which the roots perform in order to perform various other functions, so that are called as what? Root modifications. Root modifications are nothing but adaptations in roots to perform additional function. Adaptation in roots to perform additional functions. Apart from absorbing water and minerals, those additional functions will be performed. So to perform that additional functions, the plants need to adapt themselves. So those adaptations which are seen in plants to perform additional functions apart from main functions, so those are called as root modifications. Root modifications. Roots will modify themselves to perform various functions. Roots will modify themselves, adapt themselves to perform various functions. For example, in order to store food, roots will modify themselves in order to provide additional support. Apart from the primary support, additional support, to provide nitrogen to the plants, to help the plants in fixing nitrogen, roots will adapt themselves. To provide, that is to help in respiration, to help in the process of respiration, to help in the process of reproduction. So to perform other functions, these are not the functions of the root, storing the food material, nitrogen fixation, but they adapt themselves to perform so that the plant can get benefit. So those adaptations are called as root modifications, and root modifications will be in order to perform additional functions, that is storage of food, for additional support, for nitrogen fixation, for respiration, for reproduction. So these are the various additional functions which are performed by the roots. So we will see what are the different types of modifications. What are the different types of modifications which we see in the roots. So coming to the first modification, that is, we said root modify in order to store food material. So the first modification the roots will undergo is to store food material, and the roots which stores food material, those are called as storage roots. The roots which stores food material, the roots will adapt themselves to store the food material. So such roots which adapt themselves to store food material, those are called as storage roots. This is the first modification of root, that is storage roots. The roots which helps in storing the food material. Here these roots can be found, all those here, this also, that is the roots will be helping in storing the food material, but here those roots will be found in different shapes. The roots will be found in different shapes. All of them, whether this, all of them will be storing food material only, but the shape of the root will be different. When it stores food, the shape will be different. So if this, here the first shape is conical shape, Here example is we see in carrot. That is, here the base will be broader, and the base will be slowly tapering, and at the here in near the end, here the base will be broad and end will be tapering. So it forms the broad base, and here gradual tapering will be seen. So end is tapering. Here the base is broad. It forms which shape? Cone shape. So this is cone shape. So these are called as the conical roots. The roots, when they store food material, so they will attain a shape of cone. So those are called as conical roots. Example is carrot. We all have seen carrot. Here the base will be broader, and the broader base will gradually taper, and in the end it will form a cone shape. So this is the root. This is an example of a tap root which stores food material. It is in the form of a cone. So that is why it is called as conical roots. So it stores food material. The carrot which we eat normally is nothing but a root. What we are eating when we are eating carrot? What we are eating? Basically we are eating a root. That root has stored the food material, and the shape which is formed after that is storage of food material is, here we find the shape in conical shape. Next is, here apart from this, another shape is fusiform. Shape. Here in this fusiform, the base will be narrow. Here it will be narrow, and the end will also be narrow, tapering. The end will be tapering, the base will be narrow, and the middle will be swollen. So here also narrow, here also narrow. Here at the end of this, it will be tapering. Narrow base, tapering end, and this tapering takes place gradually, not suddenly as this one. This is this, then sudden tapering. It is not. It is gradual tapering is seen. Narrowing. It is swollen in the middle. Slowly it is narrowing, and at the end we have a tapering end. So this shape in which both the base is narrow, the end is tapering. Here is also, this is also, both the end shows tapering and the middle will be swollen. Tapering here at the end will be more, here it will be narrow base, tapering end, and the middle will be swollen. And this tapering is gradually, slowly it is narrowing. The middle was swollen, the swollen middle is slowly narrowing. So this type of shape is called as fusiform shape. Example of this we see in is radish, mooli. Now that is the radish which we eat is also a example of a tap root which stores food material. And the shape is fusiform shape. Here in carrot it is conical shape. So this root, this is also root. Carrot is also a root which is storing food material. This one, radish, is also a root which is storing food material. The shape of radish is fusiform. The shape of carrot is conical, that is the roots are conical in shape. Here the roots are fusiform in shape, and here another shape that is napiform. Here narrow base will be there, swollen middle. Here it is also, it was narrow till here. In the middle it was swollen, and here right from just narrow base will be there, and here it will be swollen from the tip itself, from this upward itself. This hole will be swollen middle, and sudden tapering will be seen. Sudden tapering will be seen. Narrow base, sudden tapering, and swollen middle. Here tapering is seen, but gradually, slowly it is decreasing. Here it is sudden tapering is seen in this. So this is nappy form. Here the example we find is beetroot, chukandar. Then we have turnip, that is shaljam. This is the example of, these are all three. This is that is carrot, radish, this beetroot. All these are the examples of taproot modifications. So these taproots are modified to store food materials. These taproots are modified to store food materials, giving different shapes to the root. If the shape which is found, that is if the shape is cone like, then it is called as conical roots. That is example is carrot. Then fusiform shape, that is both the sides, that is tapering. Now this is the narrow base, this is the tapering, gradual tapering, and swollen middle, which we see in radish. Nappy form, which we see in beetroot and turnip. These are all the examples of taproot modifications for storage of food material. All these roots are storing the food material. Basically the carrot, the radish, the beetroot, the that is the turnip which we eat, all these are nothing but the roots. Roots which have stored food material. So apart from performing the function of absorption of water and giving strength, that is holding the plant, it also performs the function of here, that is storage of food material. So these roots which helps in the storing of food material, they are called as storage roots. Adventitious roots will also show adaptations. Example, here these are the tuberous roots. Here they are forming a proper shape was seen, that is conical shape, fusiform shape, napiform shape. Here in this tuberous roots, the shape is irregular. There is no proper shape. The roots will be irregular. Example of this is we see in sweet potato. Adventitious roots of sweet potato. Those are the example of tuberous roots which stores food material. Here nodulose roots. Nodulose roots, for example, this we see in the turmeric. Here for example, if this at this, the roots will be swollen at the base, apex. The roots will be swollen at the apex. Here this one swollen, this is the basal region of the root. So at the apex the roots will be swollen. So those are called as what? Nodulose roots, which we see in turmeric. And here we also have fasciculated roots. Fasciculated roots, this we see in dahlia. For example, this is the stem. Here the roots will be arising from the stem in clusters. All this will be storing food material. This will be storing food material. The roots are arising from the base of the stem and they are swollen because of the storage of food material, and they are found in clusters. Here one node, that is the base of the root is swollen because of the storage of food material. So this is called as nodulose root. This type of roots which stores food material is fasciculated roots. This fasciculated roots we see in dahlia. Nodulose roots we see in turmeric. So these are the various examples of the modifications, various modifications which we see in both tap roots as well as in adventitious roots to store food material. To store food material. So the first adaptation of root is to store food material. And the roots which store food material in them, they are called as storage roots. Apart from storing food, it performs another function. These roots also helps. There are certain plants in which roots helps in respiration. Basically in all the plants, on the leaves, tiny pores will be present. Those are called as stomata. That stomata will be helping in respiration. but in few plants, that is in few plants apart from stomata, here roots will also inside this, apart from this, the roots will also help. In some plants, the roots will also help in respiration, that is gaseous exchange will be taking place through the roots. So, such roots are called as breathing roots. Such roots are called as breathing roots or respiratory roots. Breathing roots or respiratory roots or pneumatophorous roots. Here, normally in some places inside the soil, in between the soil particles, gap will be present, space will be present. So, air will enter inside that space. In the normal, that is in the normal conditions on the land, in between the particles of the soil, in between particles of the soil. So, there will be space. Inside that space, air will go inside. Air which is in the atmosphere, it will, for example, this is one particle, this is one particle. This is the land. This is the land. This is one particle, this is one particle, this is one soil. Particles will be close to each other. So, in between particles, space will be present. In between particles, space will be present. But the plants which lives in marshy areas, the plants which lives in marshy areas or swampy areas, here won't be any space in between the soil particles for air to enter. If there is space in between soil particles, the air will enter inside the space, because wherever there is space, air will be present. But here the space is filled with water and mud. The space is filled with water. In muddy areas, in marshy areas, in swampy areas, the pore between the pores, inside the pores, water is present. So, if water is present, how can air go inside it? Air cannot go inside it. So, how will the roots will respire? How will the roots will respire when the air does not go inside it? So, what happens is, in those plants, in the plants which grows in marshy and swampy areas, here for example, this is the root. This is the root. On the root hairs will be seen. These are the root hairs. Okay. So, here this in between this soil particles, this is soil particles for example. So, in between these particles, space was present. So, air was entering. So, the roots will take up the air. But now, inside of this, instead of this pores, these pores will be filled with water. The pores will be filled with water. So, if it is filled with water, air cannot go inside. In marshy areas, in between the soil particles, water will be present. So, with the presence of water, air cannot go inside. So, what they do? Here the roots, this is the extension, the roots will be growing horizontally. So, the root will grow horizontally, and on the root extensions will be seen. Root extensions will be seen. These extensions will grow upward. This is the main root which is growing downwards. It is positively geotropic. But here, in order to help in respiration, these roots will be having an extended, that is the root extension will be there. On this small roots will be formed, which will be growing towards away from the soil. It is growing upwards. These roots will be growing upwards. So, these extensions of the roots, those are called as pneumatophores. Those are called as pneumatophores. Pneumatophores are nothing but the extensions of roots which grow upwards. This is going downwards, that is positively geotropic, and these roots are growing upwards. They are growing in the upward direction, that is above the soil. They are growing above the soil. So, these roots are negatively geotropic, that is moving away from the gravity. The roots will show extension, and here these roots, smaller roots will be arising, those are called as pneumatophores. They will be growing towards the surface, that is they will be growing outside the soil. They will move upwards, sorry, not, they will be moving upwards. So on this now, so when we see this, on this pneumatophores, these extensions are called as the pneumatophores. On the pneumatophores now, small holes will be present, small holes will be present. These are called as lenticels. On this pneumatophores, small holes will be, or pores will be present. These pores are called as lenticels or pneumatophores. Lenticels or pneumatophores. So because of this pores, the air from the atmosphere will enter inside this pores. So when this enters, the air will be entering here, and the roots will be able to respire. So this type of roots which helps in respiration or which helps in gaseous exchange are called as respiratory roots, or we can even call it as breathing roots, or we can even call it as pneumatophorous roots. So the roots which will be bearing pneumatophores. So this type of adaptations will be seen only in the plants which grows in marshy or swampy areas. In marshy or swampy areas, in between the soil particles, instead of air, water will be locked. Water will be locked. So air cannot enter inside, and because of that the roots cannot breathe. So in order to breathe, in order to survive, the roots will show this horizontal extensions, and on this now pneumatophores will be formed. These pneumatophores will be growing upwards, that is away from the soil. So on this pneumatophores we have small hole like structures. Those hole like structures are called as lenticels. These lenticels will be helping in exchange of gases. So this type is seen in swampy areas. Example is mangroves, mangrove plant. Mangrove plants or mangrove trees, they grow in marshy or swampy areas. So these type of roots are seen in marshy or swampy areas which helps in respiration. They are called as respiratory roots or breathing roots or pneumatophorous roots. They help in gaseous exchange. So in this class we have seen two modifications, that is storage roots as well as breathing roots. In the next class we will see the other type of modifications.